Breaking news from Capitol Hill. With just days left to avoid a government shutdown, President Trump is canceling plans to meet with top Democrats to hammer out a deal. In a rambling Truth Social post just before he stood up to address the UN, President Trump wrote, quote, "After reviewing the details of the unserious and ridiculous demands of minority radical left Democrats in return for their votes to keep our thriving country open, I've decided that no meeting with their congressional leaders could possibly be productive." Now, he went on to list multiple items he claims Democrats are demanding: free health care for undocumented immigrants, open borders, and, quote, transgender operations for everybody. But those are actually not on their list. These are the Democrats' actual demands: an extension of expiring Obamacare subsidies, rolling back Republican cuts to Medicaid, and a promise that the White House would not eliminate spending after it is approved by Congress. My excellent reporters are back. Look, we're a week away. Democrats, of course, have leverage. Everyone says, well, the Republicans will control Congress. Democrats need to give the votes for it to pass the Senate, which is why their view is critical here. But we are entering a moment where this is feeling pretty serious right now.
It's feeling pretty serious because all the sides are very much locked in. You have Speaker Johnson saying he's not going to bring the House back to pass any sort of funding legislation that may be different than what the House has already passed. You have Schumer and Jeffries, the Democratic leaders, not backing down from their demands. And if we had seen any sort of, kernels of progress with this proposed Thursday meeting between the president and Democratic leaders, it's obviously gone now with the meeting being canceled by the president on his Truth Social account today. Weird things can happen at the last minute, obviously, as we know when it comes to shutdowns. But right now, I think the forecast of, the government shuttering seems pretty high.
Because Democrats think that they have a winning message here. The question is, will the American people agree if there is a shutdown, and if it's a painful shutdown, which they almost always are, especially if it's a prolonged one. This is what the Democratic leaders said in the aftermath of Trump canceling the meeting. Hakeem Jeffries said, Trump always chickens out. He said he canceled a high-stakes meeting. He wanted to say the extremists want to shut down the government because they are unwilling to address the Republican health care crisis devastating America. Schumer said that Trump was throwing a temper tantrum and that Trump would own the shutdown. What do you think of that political strategy?
I don't know.
And the messaging. Is it like
I think we're going to shut down.
Yeah.
I shouldn't make predictions, but it seems like we're going to shut down. The conversation on Capitol Hill last week, with the exception of this little 24-hour news cycle where there might have been a meeting at the White House, which then Trump canceled, the smart question on Capitol Hill wasn't if we're going to shut down, it's how long the shutdown is going to be. I'm sure all of us have kind of picked that up in our reporting. The thing about shutdowns, easy to get into, harder to get out. But both sides are convinced they have a winning hand. And normally you say that and you're able to sort of judge, oh, he's bluffing a little bit and that's just posturing. It doesn't seem like it right now. So, again, things can change, but it doesn't look great.
It's a gamble for Democrats, but I would argue it is a gamble that they have to take because their voters are demanding it. We remember the last time that we were in this scenario, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer got a lot of pushback, and so they have to appear as if they are at least putting up a fight. I will say, though, I remember not long ago when Mitch McConnell was the majority leader and he hated shutdowns, and he often said that it was because there was never a policy victory for the group that instigated it. And so Democrats have to go into this sort of, yes, showing their base that they're willing to fight, but also sober-minded about what policy achievement they are trying to reach.
That's the thing. It's like, what can they actually win here? Because Trump's not going to reverse the cuts that were in the one big beautiful bill, which they're demanding. They want to extend these Obamacare subsidies, and this is the impact what would happen to these Obamacare subsidies. They're expiring at the end of the year. If they are not extended, 22 million people will see their premiums increase, 4 million people will lose insurance, $350 billion is the cost of extending Obamacare subsidies. That's the cost to the federal taxpayer. But it's a complicated policy that requires a significant negotiation with Republicans in charge. That's not going to get done by Tuesday. So what can they actually achieve, Democrats, if they don't supply the votes, they block a Republican bill, and there's a shutdown?
It's a really good question. I think that on its surface, this seems like something that could be politically wise. You know, you're highlighting an issue that's an increasing vulnerability for the president. The Medicaid cuts that were in Trump's big agenda bill were not popular. They'd like to keep the focus on that. I do wonder how much this is a messaging exercise and not something that they ultimately believe they're going to get something out of. Are they going to focus things on this issue, recognizing that they're probably not going to get anything out of this, and maybe having a short shutdown ultimately? You know, we've had a lot of shutdowns over the years, and it's kind of become less and less of a political factor in later elections. And so this feels to me like Democrats feeling like they have to fight. We'll see if they actually feel like they need to take it that far.
And remember what the Republican proposal is essentially a clean spending bill. There's really not there's not a poison pill on there that Democrats can't accept. It's a 7-week extension of government funding.
Well, I think that's why Democratic leaders are so focused on the messaging war right now and trying to make a case. Because, I mean, we've all covered a lot of shutdowns in various iterations. And if there is a general rule of who gets the blame, it's often the party that asks for something extraneous. And, you know, that was like
defunding Obamacare.
Defunding Obamacare
like
in 2013. You know, obviously the President Trump in his first term threatened to shut down the government if he didn't get that additional funding for his border wall. Had that dramatic showdown in the Oval Office. This time, you know, setting aside just the value of these Obamacare subsidies that both Republicans and Democrats say they do want to work on, it is technically something extraneous to a funding bill. It's Republicans who are kind of arguing for the so-called clean government funding measure, and I don't know how. I don't know if that will be a difficult factor for Democratic leaders to overcome here.
I actually don't think it's that complicated. I think they're gonna, if they get into a short-term shutdown, you just have an argument about the ACA extensions, and it's a conversation about how long you extend them and who's eligible. And you know, the $350 billion that you mentioned, that's over a 10-year horizon. Most Republicans are probably more comfortable with a 1-year, 2-year fix. But you just have to do duration and eligibility and cost. And you know, I'm not saying we can solve it at this table in this hour, but it's not. I am, but it's not actually that. It's not actually that complicated. That's the deal that's being there. It's just a November, December deal.
Yeah.
It's not a September, October deal.
That's absolutely right. I mean, it could impact open enrollment, which is the one big concern about not getting it done now. But what you said is a short-lived shutdown. I'm not so sure it'll be a short-lived shutdown. It could be a prolonged shutdown, which, as you said earlier, it's always harder to get out of a shutdown than it is to start.
It could be the 7-week horizon, right? I mean, the Republicans, if they're going to do a deal on the ACA, they're going to do it in the Thanksgiving timeframe. So maybe the government just shuts down until then, and then they cut this deal that's there for the offing. Again, not rooting for any of these outcomes. It's just. You've been through enough of these, and you can kind of see where it's going, with the caveat that none of us have a crystal ball.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how this is going to go quite yet.